Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to today's session. Today's session is Stop Rwanda, Refugees Welcome, Don't Let Scapegoating Divide Us. It's been a really fantastic start to the day with the plenary. I hope you were able to catch the opening session to set the scene for the day. As you know, we've now got 3 workshops running consecutively. This one on the far right, and one on institutional racism. We've got an absolutely brilliant lineup of speakers, both online and on Zoom. Sorry, online and in the room. I'm just going to ask if it's possible, just because we've got the mic here and it can pick up a lot of sound, that if it's possible, if everybody could just kind of stay quiet, if that's okay. So yeah, as I said, we've got a fantastic lineup of speakers. They're on your timetables. I'm going to introduce them as we go, just so that we don't waste a whole lot of time just now. I should have said my name's Julie. I work for Stand Up to Racism National Office, and also been quite involved with campaigns like Care for Cali, the PCS Union, the TUC, and a whole host of other unions and campaigns around the campaign to Stop Rwanda and around the fight against this government's absolutely despicable hostile environment, racist hostile environment. And I think we can all look back to the time when we had Priti Patel and think that was as bad as it got, with the horrors of pushbacks in the channel being suggested as a policy, then to come through the year that we've had and end up with Suella Braverman and talks of a dream of a flight taken off to Rwanda, to a long fought battle that I won't talk too much about because other people will, over the Rwanda campaign, to find out that the courts have actually passed it as a saying that this is a legal policy. So we obviously have a huge fight on our hands in Britain, and to link up internationally to say that refugees are welcome here, that we will not allow refugees, migrants, people looking for a better life, looking to live, as our neighbours alongside us, that, we're not going to stand for people being scapegoated, for people being blamed for something that is not their fault. And we know, as trade unionists, that this government is also attacking the unions who are taking strike action to fight for a better life in the cost of living crisis. So this session is very much about trying to link in those elements and say, what can we do to build that unity that absolutely rejects racist scapegoating, and that also fights to build strong anti-racism in our unions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker. I should say as well, the way the session will run is that we'll hear from all the panel speakers online and in the room, and then we'll open up to the floor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a mixture of speakers at that point to contribute from the room, physically here in London, and from the Zoom as well. So everybody be prepared, if you want to speak, put up your virtual or physical hand, depending on where you are, and we'll try our best to get as many contributions in. So I'm going to hand over to Clare Moseley, who's here speaking with us from Care for Cali, who is an absolute stalwart campaigner, has been fighting, incredibly hard alongside others over the past years to bring solidarity to refugees and to stop the attacks that refugees are finding themselves facing. So Clare, would you be able to join us?
Yes, thank you so much to Stand Up to Racism for inviting me to be here. And as Judy said, one of our main campaigns over the last year has been combating the government's Rwanda plan. And we've been delighted to work on that with PCS Union, and it's been supported by a number of other trade unions and migrant groups across the country. It's been an amazing display of solidarity to see so many people come together behind that campaign. And we've been so happy to work with our partners on that. But an important part of that, as well as working against the Rwanda plan, is to say, what can we do to stop small boats crossing the channel? Because when we had that awful disaster in November 21 and the second disaster in December 22, we spoke to the families of some of the people who drowned in those terrible incidents. And I can tell you now that although we don't want people going to Rwanda, there is nobody more than us who wants to stop small boats crossing the channel. We strongly believe that anybody who has suffered the horrors of war or persecution should not be risking their lives once again just to claim asylum in the UK. So there must be a better answer. So one of the bits of our work has been working with PCS Union to come up with an alternative solution to put to the government to say, this is what we believe is a much better way to stop those small boats crossing the channel. And I'd like to just spend 2 minutes talking to you about how we came up with our solution and what we are proposing. Following the pandemic and the invasion of Ukraine, we were actually in Calais when the first Ukrainians turned up in Calais, because at the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine, there was no Ukrainian scheme. So just like other refugees, Ukrainians came to Calais hoping to get to the UK. And at the beginning, there was no way for them to get there. But what happened was, due to public pressure, the government very quickly instituted first the Ukrainian family scheme and then the Ukrainian sponsorship scheme. But when it first started, the very first manifestation of that was they said, let's start processing people in Calais to give them visas to come to the UK. And it didn't work very well. There was people in hotels. It was different to other refugees. They were put in hotels and given food and housed. But essentially, they were being processed in Calais and it didn't work. They tried moving them to Lille and it didn't work. They tried moving them to Paris and it didn't work. The French have a very big objection. They don't want a migrant camp to build up in Calais, whether it's housed or not. They don't want a centre to build up in Calais. And when they moved people to Lille, essentially it was no different. There was a build up of people. There was lots of problems. And then a revolutionary moment came. They moved it to an online process. And the way the online process works is that the Ukrainians, they can, if they have documents, they can upload them. They upload them. The system is all online. If their visa is accepted, then they are sent a letter, and that a letter acts as an electronic visa, and they can then cross to the UK safely and have asylum in the UK. Now, there were lots of problems with the Ukrainian scheme, but that element of it, that element where they can apply online and they can be sent a letter and they can cross safely to the UK, that element worked. Because what we've seen is that no Ukrainians have crossed in small boats and no Ukrainians have paid people smugglers. And what that proves is that when there is a safe and legal route, people don't pay people smugglers and people don't get in small boats. So it proves that safe and legal routes work. And there's other elements to it. If people don't have documents, and a lot of refugees don't, then they have visa centres across Europe, and people can go to those visa centres and they can have their biometrics taken, they can have an interview, and through that way they can get the letter, and the letter will likewise act as their visa for safe passage, and they can get to the UK, and then they've got here safely and they can claim asylum. So that's what we are advocating for. We are saying, if we can do that for Ukrainian refugees, then why can't we do it for other refugees? We're not saying anything to frighten the government like we need an open door policy. But what we are saying is there are so many people in Calais who have a very strong claim for asylum. People from places like Afghanistan or Syria or Yemen or Iran, people who absolutely terrible things have happened to, just as terrible as people from Ukraine. So why couldn't we have some kind of screening process that could work online, just like the Ukrainian one? So we don't have to have a processing centre in Calais. We don't need massive French cooperation for this. Actually, we could just do it because the system is already there. It's already working for Ukrainians. We've already got visa centres in Europe for people who don't have documents. But if they have a viable claim for asylum, they could be transferred safely to the UK. And when they get here, they could have their asylum claim processed just the same as any other refugee. So we're not advocating for offshore processing. We're advocating just for simple online screening. And if they have a viable asylum claim, which so many of the people in Calais do, the vast majority of them are genuine refugees with good asylum claims. And if the vast majority of people in Calais are genuine refugees, then those people will use that scheme. They're not choosing to get into small boats, believe me. They're doing it because they've got no choice. But if they had a choice, they would use the safe and legal way. And that would mean that the vast majority of people who are paying people smugglers would not be paying people smugglers. So we would remove all of their profits. And that's what the government says it wants to do. It says it wants to break the model of people smugglers. So it has the power to do it. It has the power to put in place something. And it did it within 2 or 3 weeks for Ukrainians. So that means it could do it within 2 or 3 weeks for other refugees. It could get rid of the people smugglers. And more importantly, it could save lives of refugees. So really, having done it before, having seen it in practice, knowing that it works, I find it so distressing that we are wasting time on things like Rwanda that we pretty much know won't work. We know Rwanda won't work. Since they introduced it, more people than ever before across the channel. And Rwanda is absolutely brutal. This would be compassionate and it would be effective. So what we're asking is for other people to back this proposal. We've got it on our website. It's been backed by PCS Union, which is amazing. The NEU have backed it, the FBU are looking at it. We're asking other trade unions to back it because for me, it's crazy. They have a system there. They know it can work. Why are we looking at things like Rwanda when there's a better way? It's more effective. It's kinder. It means that we don't have to risk our international reputation with something like Rwanda, where we risk being complicit in human rights obligations. And believe me, I talked to the families of those people who drowned in the Channel. I'm still in touch with many of them. I have a call with one of them next week, a father to yet again ask me, is there any news into the inquiry of why his son drowned in the Channel, why nobody came to rescue him? It's absolutely horrific. I have those families crying on the phone to me. We had a vigil for them at the end of last year. It's a year on and their pain doesn't fade. We don't want anybody else to drown in the Channel, and there's an easy way to stop it. So please have a look at our website, share the video, share it on social media and ask your unions to support it, because there really is a better way and we need your help to make it happen. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Claire, for that really powerful start to the meeting. I'm going to invite Hector Wesley now, who's from the National Executive of the PCS Union. And want to give a clap for the PCS. They've done a brilliant job this year alongside Clare Moseley and others, really leading on fighting to reject the hostile environment.
Thanks very much for the invitation to address the meeting here this afternoon. And I'm very proud to be a member of the National Executive of PCS. And I'm very, very proud of the members of my union who we've collectively made this decision that for a number of years, a lot of our members in PCS work in the Home Office, work in Border Force. And actually, a lot of our members that working over there is actually opposed the policies that they actually are charged with enforcing by our political masters. And you might think why that is, because actually we know the system. Our members know the system and we know how bad it is. We want to create a better system. And that's part of the reason why we've campaigned on this issue over many, many years, not just recently. The key thing I think is important to bear in mind is that we're in a pre-election period. And it is quite clear, it seems to me, that the Conservatives, for example, they think there is a path for them to victory in the next general election, and the path is through this issue. That's the reason why one of their 5 pledges is on this issue. Because they think if they cannot get Rwanda's policy to work, they've got no chance of getting re-elected. So they're going to be really determined to press ahead with this, come what may. And I think that's the backdrop. So I think we have got a struggle on our hands on this particular issue. The reason why we're against the Rwanda policy, we're not actually against Rwanda as a country, but the key thing we're against the Rwanda policy is, one, it sets a really, really bad precedent. Offshoring of asylum application processing sets a really, really bad precedent. Now, to be fair, the UK is not the only country that has trying to implement this type of policy, but in some respects, it is the most draconian. Because what they're saying, the Rwanda policy, you get sent to Rwanda. If your claim's successful, you don't come to the UK, you stay in Rwanda, right? And that is actually that's fairly draconian aspect of this particular scheme. So we're absolutely determined to absolutely oppose the scheme. We oppose the pushbacks policy. Because again, our members who in Border Force at one point are being trained to use water skis, to go in the channel to try and stop small boats, absolutely on safety grounds and all sorts of grounds, absolutely wrong. When we stopped that policy. We stopped that policy because at one point they wanted to get our members to do it. When they realized they couldn't do it, they tried to get the military to do it. And then the military, they were not touching up the barge pole, so they actually moved away from the policy. And that's where they ended up with the Rwanda scheme. But it is a difficult issue. Now, I'm clear that I'm proud that our union did take that legal case. I mean, I know from experience, the courts are no friends of trade unions. So I went into that knowing that actually we were risking quite a lot of money in terms of legal fees. But I think it was absolutely the right thing to do. Absolutely the right thing to do. And although we didn't win the substantive claim that we put forward, mainly on the issue about standing, which is a technical legal term about our ability to actually bring the claim, it wasn't a full victory for the government. And that's the reason why a lot of the other individual claimants that stood alongside us, they have not been sent to Rwanda yet. And it's actually, as things currently stand, if even the government tried to press ahead with it, it's going to take them quite some time to do that. But I think the key thing is, and this is the battle we're going to be facing, this government is pushing forward a policy of trying to make things as hostile as possible for people claiming asylum as a way of deterring people from claiming asylum. That is their policy. They want things as hostile as possible. And that's their strategy. It hasn't worked till now. I don't think it will work. It hasn't worked previously. I don't think it will work now. But that is not going to stop them pursuing it. I mean, I heard this morning that Richie Sunak's going to put new laws to say, actually, if you come without valid documents, we're automatically going to remove you, and you make your appeal against asylum. That removal, you do it from abroad. That's what the sort of thing they're arguing. They're looking to bring back some of the policies about, for example, stopping access to banking facilities, stopping access to healthcare, education, unless you've got confirmed status. All these policies are trying to increase the hostility. And that's the thing, we've got to fight that. And the reality is, you see, this is the key thing. In this room, I think most people in this room probably agree with what I'm arguing. However, there's a community out there, actually, there are some people who actually go along and think actually what the Conservatives are arguing is actually the right thing to do. And that's where we're going to have the argument. Because this issue should not be an potential election winner for the Conservatives. We've got to have our alternatives. And I think our alternative should be based on fairness. That's what we're asking for, is fairness. Because actually, when you look at the figures, you know, people think that there's far more people trying to get into this country than actually are. And, you know, this concept that the country is full, all these types of things which actually are factually incorrect. The fact is there's lots of other nations around the world who are in a far less, you know, economically, far less advantageous situation than the UK, but taking far more asylum seekers and refugees and accommodate them far more than we do. Far more than we do. These are the arguments we have to make as part of this campaign. But it is a political battle. As I say, I think part of the next election is going to be fought on this issue. Because they think it's an election issue. They think the Conservatives think this is an election winner for them. They're wedded to this policy. I mean, I do occasionally speak to Tory MPs, and they are absolutely wedded to those Red Wall MPs. All of them are signed up to this. They think it's the key to them keeping their seats at the next election. And that's the political backdrop that we are facing. But certainly our union, we will continue to fight for fairness on this issue. And our members, we live in societies, we know how bad some of these policies are, and we will always campaign for a fair immigration policy and for people to be treated with dignity and with respect. Because we fundamentally believe no asylum seeker is illegal. And we believe that human rights are universal. That's really, really important for us. So we will stick to our values, however challenging, however difficult it is. And it's important. All of us should engage. If you support us, engage with us, link with us. So, Clare Moseley colleague said a moment ago about our alternative policy. Have a look at it. If you agree with it, if you're a union official, take it to your union, take it to your union branches. Have that discussion in the workplace. It is really, really important that we do that. So actually the government don't get away with what they're trying to do. So I know I've been told to wind up, so I'll pause there. Happy to take any questions that people have got going in during the course of the workshop. But thanks a lot for turning up to this session. Really, really important. And happy to get involved in the discussion going forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Hector. That was fantastic. And I should have said that all the speakers, you get a short chance to come back on some of the discussion afterwards as well. So if people do have questions, do make sure to raise them. So our next speaker, I'm really pleased that Brendan Woodhouse, who has done a lot of work with Seawatch as somebody who's gone in and rescued people in the sea. He's also an FBU firefighter and a really long running close friend of Stand Up to Racism, and we're really, really pleased that Brendan could take the time to join us today and talk to us. So Brendan's online. Are you ready there, Brendan? Hiya.
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much for having me as well. I have been involved in helping refugees and predominantly in search and rescue since 2015. being part of the rescue of around about 8,500 people. And I'm just going to talk about historically about what's happened and then have a little eye to the future, because it's concerning. And under a Conservative government, I think it's quite bleak. So my first refugee rescue mission was in Lesbos in 2015, but I arrived in the Central Mediterranean. And I'm going to talk about the Central Mediterranean, I'm going to talk about Greece. I arrived in the Central Mediterranean in 2016, and there was a Coast Guard and a naval mission called Operation Mare Nostrum, which was in effect at the time, where there were lots of Coast Guard and Navy ships within the area who were rescuing refugees and migrants that were crossing the sea from Libya towards Italy or Malta at the time. And we were working in conjunction with the NGOs, and we were part of something where people were drowning, but at least our governments were trying to do something to help it and trying to do something to save the people. Operation Mare Nostrum ended in 2017, and Europe pulled all the ships away. By 2018, the government's targeting and criminalisation of NGOs was becoming more and more commonplace. In 2019, I was on the Seawatch 3 when we were targeted for rescuing 47 people in the sea in January. You remember the issue of Carola Raquette, when the crew were threatened with being made criminals for facilitating illegal migration. You'll be aware of the court cases that have been going on recently. And these court cases predominantly have been happening in Greece, but it's been happening in Italy too, and in France. In Greece, in 2016, Europe signed an agreement with Turkey, where they agreed to stem the flow of refugees, migrants for a whole load of money. I was there in March 20th, the day that they stopped it. We were out looking for two small boys who had fallen off the back of a rubber dinghy, and we were told by the Coast Guard that we weren't allowed to look any further. The boys had fallen into the Turkish side, and the Turks wouldn't let us cross the border to go and look for them. Those two boys washed up on the shore of Turkey the following day. In 2020, all the NGOs in Greece have been banned. And presently, we are seeing in Greece the illegal pushbacks become really terribly commonplace, an everyday occurrence where people arrive on Greek shores and they are bundled into life rafts, cast adrift at sea, and pushed towards Turkey without any engine, without food or water. They're abandoned in the sea. There is a political game being played with their lives, and it's absolutely disgusting. It's happening in Italy as well. We've seen recently lighthouse reports have reported back about a whole ferry load, well, not the whole, one whole ferry load, ferries full of people being returned from Italy back to Greece, where to their initial arrival points. And we're seeing mass violations of human rights on the borders of Bulgaria, Serbia, you name it. We're seeing refugees being beaten, starved, stripped naked, sent out into the cold, pushed out into the sea. And what we're seeing is absolutely terrible. And this is where we're heading. I think we are operating in a hostile environment for sure. And it's disgusting what we're doing. But we're not putting people into dinghies and pushing them out to sea. If we're not careful, that is the route that this government will take us. Can you imagine if the Tories get in next time round? They've been proposing wave machines, the jet skis, which the previous speaker mentioned. There'll be more and more pushbacks, more and more criminalizations of anybody that wants to help them, more drownings, Rwanda. There's a whole broadening of our incredible hostile environment is just going to occur, and we need to work out how we're going to stop this. And I think it's all of our responsibility to be part of that. We need a change of government first and foremost. We need to get rid of these Tories and get them out. I don't care who comes in, because the route that we're heading is pretty bleak. We need voices in our workplace, which fantastic to see the PCS doing it. Fantastic also to see my union, the Fire Brigades Union, being involved in this. We need to get people involved in speaking on behalf of refugees and migrants. Solidarity trips like to places like Care for Calais, like the Fire Brigades Union and other unions have been doing, have been fantastic. Because I've seen people get involved and develop first-hand experiences that they can take back to their workplaces to talk about. And that's, I think, a really important aspect. We need to be talking to our families, our friends, and our workplaces. But these conversations that are happening, they're so much more powerful if you have the words, your first-hand experience, rather than is more powerful than 1,000 tweets from a stranger. So I'm asking people to show your solidarity, get behind the campaigns from the PCS and Care for Calais. But I just don't think it's enough to be standing in solidarity. We need to be acting in solidarity. So I'd just like to encourage people to get behind Care for Calais, go to Calais, work in your workplace, be on the marches, and help the charities who are working hard within the UK to support refugees and migrants. Thank you.
Fantastic, Brendan. That was really brilliant to have you in the session. And well done to all the speakers so far for largely pretty much keeping time. We're making good time, which is always good. So we've heard from what Brendan was talking about there, from Care for Calais, and the work that the trade union movement has done in terms of solidarity work and how we can stand and support refugees and people facing the hard end of this hostile environment. But we're now going to hear from Hazar from the Hussein Must Stay campaign. I'm going to leave it to Ogie and Hazar to give it more of an introduction, because I don't want to take away too much from what you're going to say, but I want to give a massive welcome and thank Hazar and yourself as well for coming along to the session today. We're really pleased to be able to hear from you.
Yeah, in Walthamstow, we are running the Hussein Must Stay campaign, which is by now for the whole family and extending basically to everybody who is threatened with deportation to Rwanda. Just in short, Hussein's family is from Syria. We all know the incredible atrocities that happened in Syria. Hussein's father died at the hands of the Syrian authorities. And I'm also working for Amnesty International. I can give you all the reports afterwards if you give me your email address. I've got a lengthy report of Amnesty International detailing how the Assad regime has murdered thousands and thousands of people in their prisons. Now, after his father's death, the authorities tried to forcibly take Hussein into the army. At this point, Hazar took the children and headed for the border. And they tried to survive in Turkey for 5 years, which is very, very hard, because as a refugee, you're not allowed to work in Turkey. You're not getting any benefits either. You just have to somehow survive somehow. And there's a growing hostility against refugees. Throughout the last years, the Syrian authorities have randomly deported Syrian refugees back to Syria, and it's getting worse. So at some point, the family headed further, trying to find safety. And they believed that coming to England would mean they would find safety. Their human rights would be respected. There is this view out there in the world, which we should be proud of, that Britain is a safe place. So they managed to arrive in June, just after the government had passed the Nationality and Borders Bill, which meant anybody arriving via the channel would not be given asylum. And 3 months later, the first letter threatening deportation to Rwanda and offering voluntary return to Syria arrived first to Hussein, by now to the whole family. Now, Hussein cannot return to Syria. Nobody can return to Syria. Again, I can give if you give me your email addresses, I can send you the full 90-page report from Amnesty International with witness statements of what happened to people from Syria who returned to Syria. They have disappeared, they have been tortured, they have been raped, they have been murdered. There is no way anybody from Syria can return to Syria. Now, but you can just imagine what effect this has. You're on your journey for 7 years, suffering incredible hardship, thinking you have arrived, and then you get that letter. It's just crushing, like an utter betrayal of hope. Now, in Walthamstow, we have founded this campaign. We're supporting the family, and we are trying to fight the government on this policy. I will hand over to Hazar in a second, but I just want to mention at this point that Siobhan is over there in the corner with petitions. I hope everybody will sign it. We have got spare petitions that you can take to your workplaces, and we also have got an online petition, and that you all help us to fight the government in this. And I want to hand over to Hazar.
Hi, everybody. I'm Hazar from Syria. We family here, me and my daughter there, and this is my son. And before his home office give me post for Rwanda, all my family. I'm not need this. No, I don't need go in Rwanda. I need save here. I come in UK because I need save for me, for my family. Just, I don't need more. Just I need stay here and save and not scared. Because all time go in Syria out, we scared. And the boat come scared. A little bit, it's dead, all my family. I'm not speak English very good, but I'm trying. Now I come here, I need stay, me and my family in UK, and just save, I'm not need more. Just, I hope this is Rwanda stop together, me and another people. Just thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Hazar, and thank you to you both for coming as well. I think maybe that's a good point to let Hazar know how welcome you are here, and your brother. Online, I should have said we've got about 50 people on the online and similar in the room, so it's a very big session, reflecting the strength of feeling I think that there is for fighting this government's despicable policies. So I'm going to move on now. We were supposed to have a speaker from Status now. You are here. You are here. I'm so sorry because I didn't get a chance to ask you how to pronounce your name, and I didn't want to.
My name is Rogelio Braga.
Okay, great. Well, if you want to come, I'll just ask you to speak from here, if that's okay for the mic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So much.
Yes, my name is Rogelio Braga. I'm a refugee under the convention, and I'm one of the campaigners for Status Now Network. But I'm here to talk about our campaign and about the undocumented migrant living in the UK. So I wrote my speech because English is my second language, so please bear with me. So I have 6 minutes to speak, and I'm going to be brief because 140 and counting people's organizations, charities, trade unions, and various communities signed our call for the regularization of undocumented migrants and those in the system living in the UK. there is an estimated 800,000 to 1.2 million people living in the UK in precarious immigration status. Majority fell from the system because of the hostile environment. From Britain, hostile environment, a Britain hostile to migrants, standing since Theresa May was the Home Office Secretary in 2012. We are calling for status now for all people who have been made undocumented by the UK's immigration system, who are stuck in the asylum system, but that was intrinsically designed to fail, who are waiting years for decisions on their applications, and their lives are in limbo, who are separated from loved ones across the border, who have no recourse to public funds and cut off from essential services. Our call for status now has started in March 2020, at the onset of the global pandemic. We witnessed during the nationwide lockdown how migrants with precarious migration status and their children were thrown into destitution. We witnessed how people just die inside their flats because they were afraid to seek help. We campaigned together with our partners and won that vaccination should be extended to undocumented migrants. We all witnessed the disproportionate deaths, I'm sure you're aware of this, among the BAME communities. We witnessed how a highly skilled engineer from their home country was de-skilled here in Britain because of the mere presence of an undocumented migrant inside the workplace has rendered to be a crime under the hostile environment. Personally, I witnessed how an undocumented migrant worked £5 per hour in a chicken shop because he was afraid of three things: to die in destitution, to be removed in the UK, and to seek legal help as an exploited worker. As we all know, the situation of undocumented migrant, this is a slow burning dehumanization until the brown and black bodies are rendered weightless, dehumanized, without dignity, useless. Workers, that is actually the key word that we're trying to introduce here. Undocumented migrant workers are also workers. I'm going to repeat it. Undocumented migrant workers are also workers. It is still labor power, no matter what the border control believe us to be. Solidarity should go beyond borders, should go beyond migration status. I have so many questions here, but it will always boil down to this. How can we establish a concrete employee-employer relationship to extend the protection if a worker is rendered criminal because of a precarious migration status by the hostile environment? The answer is clear: regularization of all undocumented migrants living in the UK and those who are in the process. Since 2020, Status Now has engaged government officials, politicians. We even wrote a letter to the former Prime Minister in 2020. The government know the most rational solution. Politicians know the most reasonable and compassionate interventions, but they chose the most irrational, the thing that could divide our communities further: racism. Brown and black migrant bodies are the sites of border violence in British society. I don't want to elaborate further, but we all know that border policing has been extended to the civilians by the hostile environment. Your landlords, your university admission officers, your bank tellers are checking your migration status. Status Now condemns the continued political and physical attacks on refugees, asylum seekers, and others without their status in the UK. We acknowledge that many people, even with the right to work, are often in precarious situations due to their immigration status. We reaffirm the right of all workers to employment, which is safe and secure and have access to justice against labor exploitation in the workplace. We in Status Now believe that immigrants who are undocumented and working in the UK have the right to join trade unions and be protected from exploitation and modern slavery. Our call, made by a number of migrant bodies, anti-racist, poverty eradication groups, and others, that all documented and people with insecure immigration status residing in the UK should be granted indefinite leave to remain. racism will always be irrational. Regularization of all undocumented migrants and those in the process and the end of hostile environment are the most reasonable way to move forward, because in its status now, we believe that these could lead us to social justice, to a better British society that is fair, just, and compassionate. Thank you very much.
That was a brilliant contribution to the meeting, so important. I'm going to move on because I know, is it just me or is it quite hot in this room, to be honest? Can I ask if any of the team could look into whether there's a thing on the wall for any aircon, and if not, if they could look into maybe the people, the people have spoken, and yeah, maybe the door, and hopefully that won't be too noisy. So I'm going to move on to our next speaker, who is Shabbir Lakha from Stop the War, and we're delighted to have you come and speak.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here today. Thanks to Stand Up to Racism for inviting me, and thanks to all the speakers who've been absolutely brilliant. I think this has been a great session so far. I want to start by saying something which I never thought I would, and that is to give a shout out to Suwaila Braverman. Because as Julie said at the start, I don't think anyone thought there could be a worse Home Secretary than Priti Patel, and somehow she proved us wrong. I think there couldn't have been a clearer image of the government's agenda than Rishi Sunak's press conference on Monday, where he set out his 5 priorities, where he was answering questions about his tax-dodging former Chancellor and Tory party chairman, with a backdrop that had his priorities, that had in massive letters right above his head, stop boats. And this is at a time of a soaring cost of living crisis, with millions of people falling into poverty, our NHS on the brink of collapse, when we're told that there's no money for wages or public services. The Tories and their mates are profiting and partying. They are waging class war against working people in this country, and they need scapegoats to distract people from that. And the war at home on working people is completely intertwined with the wars that our government is waging abroad. One area of government spending that has been inflation-proofed, that has consistently been increased, that has cross-party support for being increased, is defense spending. And shamefully, last year, we saw that in the TUC, there was a motion that was adopted that backed the government on increasing defense spending. And this is something that our movement has to fight to overturn at the next Congress. Because with war, more money for weapons, don't come jobs, but come death and misery, come the impoverishment of millions of people, and the creation of more refugees. It is no surprise that the majority of people who are languishing in Calais and Dunkirk right now are from countries that have been ravaged by our bombs and our economic warfare. And with that also comes inevitably the ramping up of racist rhetoric. They used Islamophobia to justify their war on terror. And we saw when the war on Ukraine started last year that we were told this is the first time it's happening in a civilized country in so long, not like Iraq and Afghanistan. And suddenly, as Claire was saying earlier, they had the ability to create safe and legal routes for refugees to come here, or at least on the face of it. We later found out that the Home Office was artificially inflating their numbers by giving, it's hard to fathom the cruelty of this, by giving refugee status to everyone in a family except one person, usually a child, knowing that it would mean the whole family wouldn't be able to come here. Our government is actively blocking peace talks that could bring the war in Ukraine to an end. They are pushing for escalation with all its dangers, knowing the misery and death it is causing to the Ukrainian people, the impact it's having on energy prices, that we're told that we're just supposed to live with. They continue to fund the oppression of the Palestinian people and the destruction of Yemen. And in order to divide and distract us, they want us to believe that it is the refugee drowning in the channel that is the enemy, that is the cause of our misery, and not the CEO of Shell or Lady Michelle Mone with her dodgy PPE contracts or the arms dealers. And this is happening across Europe. We saw the head of the EU foreign policy calling Europe a garden and the rest of the world a jungle, and that is the responsibility of the gardeners to stop the wild people from jungle again, or something to that effect last year. And they've been strengthening their fortress Europe through Frontex, and this has directly led to the growth of the far right across Europe, and the same is happening here. And on the flip side, we've seen the hospitality of British people, the millions of hundreds of thousands of refugees from Ukraine who've been welcomed into people's homes. And we shouldn't forget that in 2015, Amnesty International rated Britain as the most refugee welcoming country in Europe. That 100,000 British people went to Calais and to Lesbos to directly volunteer to support refugees. But it was our government that stopped that solidarity being extended the way it has been extended to Ukrainian people. And right now, the Tories are terrified of the majority of people's natural instincts against hate and the growing consciousness, organization, and militancy of the working class and their hatred of the Tories. And that's why they're attacking refugees. That's why they're passing laws to stop us being able to strike effectively or to protest. But that's exactly why we need to strike even more. We need to protest even more. And we need to build the anti-racist and anti-war sentiments through them. It was incredible to see so many people striking and protesting on Wednesday, on the 1st of February, and I was on the massive demonstration in London. And what I saw was collective action and solidarity, the antidotes to the attempts that their attempts to divide and break us. And we have to make sure that the anti-racist message is central to the Stop the War demonstration on the 25th of February calling for peace in Ukraine. We have to make sure that the anti-war message is central to the Stand Up to Racism demonstration on the 18th of March. And we have to make sure that both those messages are central to every mobilization, to the demonstration for the NHS on the 11th of March, to the Budget Day demonstration on 15th of March, on every picket line and every protest in this country. We have to keep fighting. We need a united movement that brings this racist, warmongering government down once and for all. Solidarity and thank you.
It's been a really, really empowering set of speeches that we've had. We've got one left in the panel, and then we're going to open it up to the floor. So, you know, shake yourself down a little bit and think about what you might want to add into the discussion. I'm going to hand over to Alex Penson, who's here from XR, is it UK Action Circle, from Extinction Rebellion. And we're really glad that you're here to draw those links between the incredibly inspiring climate movement and the, you know, and the fight for rights.
Hi, thanks a lot. I'm really glad to have been invited to come and talk to you guys. So I'm representing XR, but I was personally a little bit involved in the Rwanda deportation blockade in June last year. And then I'm in a couple of like immigration raid groups. So these are organized by sort of anarchisty kind of collection of different groups. So they're not at all XR branded. It just that wouldn't be appropriate. As a couple of the speakers have mentioned, the sort of the right wing of the Conservative Party do see this kind of immigration issue as really important for them. And so I think in XR we see really deep connections between the far right and fossil fuels, basically, and a particular kind of masculinity, basically. So fossil fuels are involved in really entrenching capitalism and also colonialism, for example, like by allowing steamboats to go up rivers and stuff like that. That really, obviously, colonialism existed for hundreds of years before, but like it really just changed the story. And similarly with capitalism, fossil fuels make capitalism and the far right far stronger than they would be. And so XR tries to push back on all of these things, but there are various trade-offs, right? XR absolutely has not got these issues correct in the past. But also the perception of XR sometimes is, the perception of XR is sometimes affected by other issues. So I'm going to give an example from this week. We organized one demo that was to do with justice and involved 25 social justice, social and environmental justice groups. So that included Global Justice Now was speaking, Campaign Against the Arms Trade, Netpol were there. There were lots of groups. And it was really like elaborate, felt really valuable to make those connections, but it didn't get media attention. Whereas then a much less elaborate action in the viewing gallery of the House of Lords that did get in the papers because it's just seen as outrageous. And then also we were at the February 1st march, making connections with the trade union movement. And that feels really, really important to me. When XR kind of came onto the scene in 2019, the trade union movement was much less strong. And I think XR is waking up to like the massive power of organized labor and how we're best able to connect with that. I think trade unions are often quite suspicious of XR and other sort of anarchisty groups that are seen as leaderless, and so I'm coming to understand those sort of mutual suspicions. I think also, XR sometimes goes to left events, trade union events, and issues of climate and just transition are barely even mentioned sometimes, and that just feels like a massive disconnect when ultimately I think to a great extent the two have so much in common. So I guess I feel like, or the XR's strategy for this year effectively is that, because I think it's a realization that many of these different organizations have weaknesses and can complement each other. And also just that this situation has got as serious as it has. Obviously, people are dying across the world right now. This is escalating and will continue to escalate until we turn off fossil fuels, basically. And so a slogan is like, unite to survive. The idea is that our various different movements needs to try and bridge the gaps and just figure out our differences urgently. And I think also when contrasting groups have been able to find common cause and really display that solidarity, that does come across to people, to decision makers. People in power will notice that. And so that feels really important to me. I over the past 6 months or so, I have felt like I've really come to understand the trade union movement and the possibility for solidarity there. So I hope you guys can too. In late April, starting April 21st, but going on for over a week, we're planning a big demonstration in Parliament Square. So there's planned to be 4 days of like preparation, and that may not be in Parliament Square. That will be like a legal, possibly like a warehouse, some kind of preparation in the 4 days leading up to it. Then starting April 21st is 4 days in Parliament Square. So that includes the Saturday's Earth Day, the Sunday is the London Marathon, the Monday is the first day back for MPs. So there's going to be a sort of an arc there. And then there'll be 4 days after that with some kind of different flavour. And that leads up to May Day, which is a bank holiday. So anyway, obviously, we're trying to get lots of groups involved. And so there are lots of unknowns. Every group that's interested to connect to it has their own ideas of what they want. And so anyway, we just, hope you can, I'd love to speak more about it. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Alex, and it was really great to make that connection, have you come along today. It's a that's what the conference is for, really, is networking between the unions, different campaigns, and so sort of in that spirit, I think, hand it over to the floor. I'm going to try and take a mixture of people from the room here in London and from the Zoom room. So as I said before, if you're in the Zoom and you want to say something, I can see them coming up now, that's good. Put up your virtual hand. And we'll try to take a mixture of people. You're in the physical room, you know what to do. I should say as well, for the people on the Zoom, we're trying to keep a pace that we can get as many people in as possible. And so if you go on too much after the 3-minute allocated sections, then we will auto-mute you, so just to prepare people for that. I don't know what I'm going to do with you lot if you go over, but you know, don't try it and see how it's just. Okay, so I'm going to start with yourself. If you could just keep your hands up and I'll take a note as well, thanks.
Okay, thank you. My name's Sasha. I'm with Hackney Stand Up to Racism. And just for the purposes of this meeting, my dad was a refugee as well. I'm a son of a refugee. And I thank people who've spoken today. I want to pick up on some of the points that have been discussed from the top floor. So I think it's quite important that we recognise that although the government is racist, and the Rwanda scheme is absolutely racist, and it is, and the people are right at the top table to say that the government see this as a path to office. Actually, that most people reject the Rwanda scheme on all sorts of levels. Patel, before she was deposed, before she was replaced by Braverman, said that the Rwanda scheme was what the British people want. This is what she tweeted out 2 years ago. Actually, polls should suggest 10% of the population support Rwanda. That is not overwhelming support. Now, you know, people may challenge at all sorts of different levels. Seem work on an economic level. You know, to spend £140 million to deport 200 people just doesn't make any sense on any kind of level. But this is about ideology, and this is about appealing to the racists. It's not what the British people want; it's what the racists want, and we have to mobilise to challenge them. The other thing we've got to say is that you know, ordinary people have provided physical help to I think the last time I saw something, it was like a third of the British population had donated coats or money or shoes or something like that to help refugees. Again, that's real, but it goes beyond that. And this is where we should take hope. We are the majority. It was 2 years ago in Holland Shields in Glasgow that people came out the streets to block border forces deporting people, and they won. Last year, the same thing happened in Edinburgh, and I was very proud as a resident of Hackney that it happened in Hackney. We kicked the police off when they came for our brothers and sisters on the streets, and it happened in Peckham. That's what the government is scared of, and what we've got to do is keep that grassroots network going, because I'm sad to say this is not just about getting rid of the Tories. The Labour Party leadership have not committed to getting rid of the Rwanda scheme. You know, we've got to be aware of that. You know, they can try that and say that they're there to wait for a replacement. You've got to challenge every time they come for it. It's not a slogan that refugees are welcome here, it's the reality. Refugees are welcome here, we've got to build on that power. You know, they can pass all the laws they want, but implementing them is quite another thing if we say no.
If I could ask the text, the next speaker I'm going to take is Dax online. So if we could get Dax unmuted. Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon to you all, folks. I don't think I'm going to make many friends with what I'm about to say now. I'm a little bit disappointed that the TUC is giving the airtime to some of the what I would describe as fringe groups and their opinions about what they describe as refugees. And I was hoping that there might be a speaker today that would perhaps set out that not everybody who comes to this country claiming asylum is determined to be a refugee within the definition of the various conventions and treaties. I think it's this is turning into a bit of a disappointing conference for me in that respect. The gentleman who just spoke then, for example, I have an open question to this conference. If you are the majority, as you claim you are, why are you not winning at the ballot box? Why is it that when people are asked questions about the relaxation in the controls of migration in this country, that they do not respond in the way that and with the passion that he has just demonstrated? If, as you say, we are the majority, then why is it that frequently people, when they are polled and when conversations come up and articles are written in the press, why then is there a underlying feeling that the right wing can tap into where they can demonize people who try to enter this country through whatever means? And I hope that that question leaves you all with some food for thought. Thank you.
All right. So the next person I'm going to take, moving on, is the speaker there.
Thank you. That's what that is. Rich people get any money on the family. If you're rich, you can buy things. Simple as that. Simple as that. So, I'm a teacher, no. And of course, I do that every day. And I make sure when I'm talking about them without wearing a t-shirt, because I'm actually very, very proud of you. Not only am I proud that we smashed all records and getting more members than anybody else in the history of the planet, 40,000 whatever, but I'm also proud that the last conference we all wore these t-shirts, right? I'm also proud, I think, to be a foster carer of a young man called Hussein, but it's with an O and not a U. And if you Google Hussein Must Stay with an O and not a U, you'll see my child story. I'm also proud to be the mother of a trans child. We might as well do blame everything on. And I'm very proud that last Sunday I do regular distributions. I actually operate in the UK as well. Not just in France, in the UK. So every Sunday, I really Sunday, like other people, we go to whatever near bloody awful hotel. So the hotel go out for a weekend, but not for a year or 2 years or whatever many years. And last Sunday, my trans gal, I mentioned them, we were having our distribution stocks and made a brand that plays on those that talk about our lives, etc. And I put a microphone in church. And my child got up there and said, "Oh, go and sing the song." And my child sang Red Roses to refugees. And everybody laughed. And everybody laughed. You see, that's it, isn't it? Every time they try and divide us, we say, how can we unite us? Why are refugees refugees? It's a question. Often because they're people like us who've had children. At the end of the day, short hair, guess which is from? Iran. And that's it. The government hates us, they hate refugees, and we're going to find a way to put together. So I went to the uranium protest, and I went, yeah, we'll tell you about our strike. Oh my God, this is what you don't even need an example in the language so you can tell your friends. I don't want you to come to their protest, 12 o'clock. So they're out. With women's rights, freedom. And that's it. When we walk out this room today, we do the practical thing where we can, support the socks, the pram, we do the other thing. Looks like, how do you do the end, you can go down, going 2 times, once the 15th, bring down the oven, and once the 18th, refugees are welcome here, say it loud, say it clear.
Can I just get we check the hands again? Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes, okay. I'm going to take yourself, if that's all right, and then we'll... Oh, and sorry, I've just got a reminder to say this. If at all possible for people, I know it's difficult with the way the chairs are, the mic, sadly, for the people online is here. So if anyone is able to come up and speak from the front, it will be a bit better sound. If not, you can just try and really project. Sorry about that.
Hi, I'll try to be brief. I'm Tracy, I'm on the NEC of PCS with Hector, who's already told you about everything we're doing here. I'm also a grandchild of the Windrush generation. We've seen what's happened there when people were actually encouraged to come over and how decades down the line things can be changed. So whatever wins we make for refugees now, we've got to be mindful that they can always be turned over in the future, and that we need to be supporting those who are affected already as well as those who are to come. We've heard from the person who spoke before that there's a lot of work, not you, the person before, there's a lot of work to be done with some members in our communities who are in our workplaces and in our unions. So I'd ask all of you, what are you doing within your unions to educate the political education to your work, in your workplace, to your members and with your communities? Because often the resistance comes from those communities which are less diverse. They have a fear of the unknown. So what is being done, particularly in those communities, to kind of get over this narrative that has been pushed and they are willingly accepting. We all have a part to play in this, in our conversations, and with as trade unionists, we should be challenging and we should be educating and maybe resist our temptation sometimes to go there to somebody when they come out with something that we quite clearly think is wrong, because it's often, you know, we have to be mindful that, you know, everybody doesn't know till they know, and you know, and changing minds. So just like to say, please support anything within, start something in your trade union branch if it's not there. And also just to shout out that Hector is also involved in an organisation called Barak, and for years they've gone out actually physically providing food and support to people in Calais, as well, of course, Care for Calais. So if you can, not obviously times are hard, if you can, please support those, because while we're fighting here, there's people still suffering over there.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to take yourself. I know it may be difficult to come up. Oh, no, okay. That's great.
Hassan Hajar from the Chesterfield Stand Up to Racism. Thanks to all the excellent speakers, contrary to the ignorant comments made online. Hector made a really important point, that the Tories are determined to make Rwanda an issue, an election issue. And I think we really need to push back against that. Shouting out refugees are welcome here is excellent. But if we can start showing examples of how we support refugees at the ground level, that's really powerful as well. So in Chesterfield, we've got lots of examples of things that we have done. And one of the big issues is for the asylum seekers, is trying to make sure that we do the best for their mental health issues. Because staying in a hotel, as has been pointed out, is not a luxury at all. We've done things like having a football game for all of them on Sundays, providing bikes for them, getting them to volunteer, and lots of other examples that I'm willing to share. And so really, if we can get to start supporting asylum seekers on the ground, and perhaps if the TSC and Stand Up to Racism can start showcasing all the examples around the country, maybe we'll convert more people to get involved.
Next speaker is going to be the red hat person at the back. And if I could just get another little show of the hands here. Remind myself. Okay, good. Yes, please.
My name's Sarah, and like my comrades Hector and Tracy, I'm also in PCS, and I totally agree with the people who've said that the government is using racism to divide us, because it's obvious they have no solution to the economic crisis. They know that climate change is just going to get worse and worse, and there are going to be millions of climate refugees, and so this is the idea, isn't it? We're supposed to be used to poor wages, to endless racism, and just put up with it. The attacks on trans people, you know, whoever it is supposed to be blamed. But we are fighting back. PCS is, we have been on strike last week, which was completely brilliant. We had so many picket lines in so many places. It's quite clear people want to fight back. And that's why it's so important that our colleagues in the Home Office are essentially refusing to do what their employer, our government, is telling us to do. I mean, this is a massive shift. This is not what civil servants normally do, I can tell you. And, you know, we really have to make the point that the problem is not people in little boats. The problem is the people in the super yachts, the billionaires. Those are the people who are causing all of our problems. And that's why, you know, this is what they, you know, the man online there who said he was disappointed by the conference, this is what he is failing to understand, because, you know, the most diverse government we've ever had in British history is using racism to divide us, because they know that there is just, they have no solutions to the economic crisis. So one of the things about the Rwanda plan, the obvious point is, you know, it was brilliant our union went to the High Court over this and we put serious money into it, and you have to do those things. But when you lose that court case, you don't just back off. You know, Tory judge sides with Tory government shock, you know, so to hell with them. And the thing is, the more organising we do, the more of, you know, if we have hundreds of thousands of people out on the 18th of March and more strikes, the more likely we are to keep people off those Rwanda flights forever. And that's the best way of ensuring that we fight back. Because when we say in the unions, an injury to one is an injury to all, this is what it looks like. You know, they don't come for white middle class people. They come for, they don't, first of all, they don't come for white organised trade unionists. They try and make out that Black and Asian people are not part of the working class, that refugees are not part of the working class. Well, in our strike on Wednesday, we saw what the British working class looked like in schools and across our civil service departments, and we are the power to push these people back and make sure that nobody gets targeted again in future.
Okay, I've got.
Right, my name's Andy. I'm from Newham, SUTR in East London. I'm also a volunteer with Care for Calais and a hotel lead on a hotel with 370 refugees in our borough. I wanted to make one comment and three kind of practical suggestions of where we're going to be campaigning for the next year or so. The first thing I wanted to say is that we still, I think, are treating the Nationality and Borders Bill and also the Rwanda plan as a kind of future threat. And in fact, it's very much a present threat. It's already being used against refugees who are coming in. So to take an example, and they're all examples from among the people in the hotel where I'm a volunteer, it is not unheard of. It's becoming more common for people to be taken from the boats, arrested for illegal migration, sent straight to a magistrate's court, where if they are lucky, they will have a duty solicitor. The duty solicitor will tell them they must plead guilty. And then they will find themselves with a prison sentence of up to a year, after which, of course, they live with a criminal record and are either disallowed from applying for asylum or are more liable to deportation. That is happening now, and I can tell you the people it's happening to. Similarly, it was the case because of legal actions, legal defences that we made. There was time to arrest people for allegedly being people smugglers, when actually what it meant was they were the guys sitting next to the engine as the boats came in. And if you were the guy sitting next to the engine, you were accused of being a people smuggler. When everyone knows, by the way, the one place you'll never find a people smuggler is at an open boat on the channel, right? Yeah. That was overthrown by legal defences. It is now back. So there are more people now who are being charged with people smuggling because they sat next to the engine. Be clear about it. And again, they are doing time. Not they might do time, they are doing time. Right? Similarly, the Rwanda letters, Hussein is a good example. Don't be under any illusion. There are at least hundreds and probably thousands of refugees in the hotel who have got the first letter of the Rwanda process. Thousands. In every hotel where we work in my borough, there are people who've got that Rwanda letter already. Therefore, the first thing I want to suggest as a practical campaign is exactly the Waltham Forest one is a very good example. It is community campaigns to defend individual people threatened. And this is not a thing for a bunch of lefties. It's not just for trade unionists and people who call themselves socialists. This is for anybody in the borough. And Waltham Forest, you can talk to the people here, is exemplary. It does include all kinds of community organisations you wouldn't think would be involved in a defence campaign. It includes churches, it includes local faith groups, it includes, don't write off the councillor and the MP, just because you disagree with them on a lot of stuff, you need to wait, no? So community campaigns is one of them. The second thing I want to suggest, and I think it can be difficult and it can be hard. Yep. Is that finished?
Yeah, but finish your sentence. sorry.
It'll be a really long sentence.
It's not.
It's clear the second thing I'll mention is the need to fight back when there are anti-refugee protests in and around the common. And the third is the material support, and it's not because we need trainers and all that, which we do. It's because collecting material support is a means of taking up the arguments that we've just heard and taking up the case and the defence for refugees. That's why we do it. It's not charity, it's solidarity.
Okay, I'm going to try and squeeze in a couple more. So I'm going to take yourself. Are you able to just?
I speak very loud.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'm Maxine. I'm from Sheffield Trade Union Council. I'm the Vice President there. And on the way down here, I listened to what the Tories were talking about. And we say stop the matter, but they are saying stop the boats. And that's their big, everything they talk about at the end of it is stop the boats. And stop the boats and also stop the hotels as well. The two things are going to be part of their campaign. And we're going to have to up our game to take this on head on, I think. And although I'd say the Tories are not fascists, they are fascist enablers. I mean, the idea of when they start to talk about the hotels, I know that in our region, in Hull, we've had the patriotic front out demonstrating against the prospects of another hotel with refugees in, and I know that they're coming to South Yorkshire to have a go at one of the hotels there, and we are mobilising. We will mobilise people to oppose them because we cannot allow those people to be out there intimidating refugees, and that's what they're about. So that's one of the things that I think is really important that we do. The other thing is I think we have to take on the myths as well, because we've not got lots of people putting our arguments forward. We produced a Mythbuster talking about how many refugees, which countries take the refugees. Actually, we don't take many at all, to be honest, but they haven't got legal routes to get into this country, and they could have legal routes, but the government don't want to give them those legal routes, so they're not illegal. Such nonsense, this stuff about illegality. And I think taking them arguments is important, and then supporting the refugees as well. I mean, we've had quite big fundraisers for the refugees. I think we've raised 2,500 over Christmas. We have 9 people going out to Cali this weekend. And we're taking new people with us this time, because when we take new people along, they are quite shocked how bad things are out in Cali for a start off. And actually they come back and they argue with other people to support the refugees. And we will make sure that they have a format where they can talk about what's happening with the refugees and build up our side of resistance. I think that's quite important. And then finally, I want to say, embedding our arguments in the trade union movement is so important. This week, I thought Wednesday was really the politics of hope. The hope that we could do something better in this world. And you can see that in terms of it being a celebration of resistance. But you can see quite easily, it's not just in this country, globally, the way in which the far right are trying to build again. I mean, somebody mentioned the question of Turkey, and I know the far right have this fairground attraction thing where you can come up and buy a ticket to deport a Syrian refugee back to their country, and they promise they will do that, right? It's not just here, that it's globally these things are going on. It's disgraceful what they're doing, but we've got to take that argument head on. And I think we can win that argument, but we need more people on board to do that.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to try and squeeze. Oh, okay. I'll take yourself. Thank you. And then I'll just Okay. And just while you're coming to the front, I would say to all our many panel speakers, it would be great for people to have a chance to come back in. Obviously, we're quite short of time, and I have prioritised people from the floor. But just have a think. If there's something you'd like to say, try and fit it into a minute or a minute and a half, and let me know if you're not wanting to come in. Sorry,
it's the first time I've come to stand up to racism. I'm from the Birmingham branch, and I'm really glad I came because I want to talk to that gentleman who talked about refugees. If he ever heard a refugee's story, he would not have those opinions. He would take them away from his mind, his thoughts. We have to be honest. They all come with a story. This lady came here today and talked about her story. She hasn't even gone halfway to even describe what's happened to her here. And how can we turn her away? Can we really turn her away and her family? No, we can't. So that's why I've got up here to talk, because it's disgraceful, that thought, what was in his head. But I forgive you. I forgive you. I'm told to understand forgiveness. So I forgive you from having that thought. But next time, try and think about someone's story. And that's what I would like to say to him. Forgive and understand other people's stories. Because I'm telling you, if this lady really could tell you her story, you wouldn't want to hear. I remember studying, and I worked in a refugee centre. And I remember a young man coming in, and he started to tell his story. I could never have those thoughts in my head ever again. And that's what is happening. The government's not allowing people to hear people's stories. And if they heard people's stories, we wouldn't have Rwanda. That's all I've got to say.
That was really fantastic, and I'm glad I did call you, because I think sometimes in these meetings, people can put their hand up at the very start, people can put their hand up much later, and it's important, you know, not everybody knows what they want to say at the beginning of the meeting and stuff. So I'm really sorry to all the people that I know online and here did put their hand up early and tried to get a bit of a balance and stuff. But I would say that throughout the conference, the discussions will continue. There's breaks, there's a stall area downstairs and everything, and please do keep sharing and talking and so on, keep sharing experiences. I'm going to now bring back our panel. If you don't have to come back, but if people want to come back, we've got about 10 minutes for all of you. So just bear that in mind, and maybe just think of the one thing that you'd like to kind of crystallise about today. I'm going to do it in the reverse order, if that's all right with people. You ready, Alex? Okay. So I'm going to start with Alex, and yeah, as I said. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks for all the comments. It's definitely been really interesting to me to hear what you guys have to say, and for sure, refugees is an issue that connects so many other parts of what we're all here for. So I guess the main thing is just I'd just be really glad to speak to anyone about the thing that we're doing in April, starting on April 21st. I guess that's the main thing that I want to leave people with. But also just, I'm really personally interested to try and, make connections and find common cause between different groups. So thank you very much.
It's a really good start to the succinct things, and what I was going to say is at the end of the speakers we will have a round of announcements of things that are coming out of the conference. So I think that's a really good, people bringing in cash and things, that's what it's about. So we'll add that to the list of focuses that we want to look at. Shabbir?
Yeah, I'll be very quick. Thanks for the comments, and it's great to hear all the great work that people are doing. I'll say three very, very quick things. One is, I know we are in a majority. The polls, the practical solidarity, and so many other things show that. And that is why the Tories are ramping up what they're doing. And they have the power of the state to inflict their policies, to push their racist rhetoric, to use the mainstream media. And during times of economic hardship, that is when their ideas can have a purchase. And that's why what we are doing and need to do is so much more important. Secondly, to very badly paraphrase Desmond Tutu, we need to be pulling people out of the river, but at some point we also need to go upstream and figure out why people are falling in the river in the first place. And that means we need to do everything we can to help refugees now, but we need to stop our warmongering government from creating more refugees. And these things are intertwined. And thirdly, authoritarian and bastardic as they are, this government is divided and weak, and they are terrified. They're terrified of us. They're terrified of working people. And we need to break them, and we can break them. We need to build every strike, every protest. We need to make sure that our message against war, against racism, and everything else is at the heart of it, and we can do it. Thanks.
I just want to go back to telling the stories and the guy who actually asked a question online. And it's really, I don't, personally, I don't respond to it, but I engage that. So one way for me to engage what we're doing right now is I encourage you to look at this reality that hostile environment is here for almost a decade. It created a certain language, it created a certain culture, and reinforces a British civic nationalist identity formation. What I'm going to challenge you is that because we are having a hard time, people, the British public, to read the bodies of brown and black undocumented migrants because they are considered illegal in the British institution. So I would like to invite everyone, how far can you go to use racism, our black and brown bodies to reinforce your British civic nationalist identity for us to be given a space to be treated as a human being and for you to be our partner. Please, at this point, we have change and at least give a chance to regularize all undocumented migrants and those in the process living in the UK today, even if it does not align to what you consider as British civic nationalist identity. So please support Status Now and support our campaign. And thank you very much. Maraming salamat.
Thank you to everybody for their important contributions and
Okay, just very quickly, the fact that I'm living in relative comfort and stuff is a matter of pure luck of the time and the place of being born. And my friend Hazar, 10 years ago, wouldn't have thought she would be a refugee. She had a life, a house, a career, everything the same what we are having. So standing together with refugees, it's not charity, it's solidarity. We are all the same human beings. 80 years ago, Europe was a pile of rubble and millions of refugees were on the move. On the back of that, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights was declared, which has got in Article 6, every human being has got the right to seek safety, to seek asylum from persecution. Now the British government is trying to shirk this responsibility and we have got to fight it all the way. And I just want to hand over.
Yeah, I don't need more. Just I need every people here help me and my family in stop Rwanda. Yeah. Just, I'm not need more. I thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. Brendan?
Hi, thank you again. There's obviously lots of knowledge and experience at conference today, and it's been wonderful to hear that. I pretty much said everything I wanted to say earlier on, but I wanted to kind of support really what Maxine Bowler had to say earlier on about getting people involved in this. And I wanted to encourage, there's lots of groups here listening and lots of organizations. I wanted to encourage you all to get new people that come and get involved in this on your solidarity visits. When someone new joins our groups, we need to empower them with experience. We need to harness their enthusiasm, and then we need to release them back into the communities that we have with the passion and the momentum that their experiences will bring. And thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. Hector is next.
Yeah, just a couple of brief points. I mean, listening to the person online spoke earlier, it took me back because I mean, in PCS, we've been through a bit of a journey because certainly some of these issues in the past were really, really contentious debates within our union, very, very contentious. And we developed, we had arguments, we had debates, and that's why actually recently we didn't have contentious debates on these types of issues. Actually, it was grassroots members and local reps who were coming to the national executive. You need to do something about this. You need to oppose what's going on. Members in the Home Office who actually used to oppose us years ago, camping on these things, actually saying to us, actually, we need you to be actually getting involved in opposing these policies. We don't want to be implementing these types of policies. Thing for us is we will continue to campaign on these issues because there's lots and lots of things that we need to be doing. I mean, one of the things that came out in the last few days about, 200 asylum-seeking children gone missing. Again, a shocking situation, appalling failure of safeguard. We need to get to the bottom of all of that. And we're going to be part of getting to the bottom of all of that. But we are part of the journey. The key thing is we know there's a battle to be fought here and we're ready for that battle as a union because absolutely our members insist that we actually get involved in those particular issues. But I think the key thing is had that argument. So you do need to hear those messages that we heard online, but you do need to have those arguments in the workplace. Because I know I have those arguments regularly in the workplaces, but absolutely I relish it. Personally, absolutely relish it. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Hector. Clare Moseley from Clare is going to be our last speaker in a moment to round the session up. I've just got some quick announcements before Clare does that, so please do hang on. Firstly, is to say that Stand Up to Racism is going to be launching a campaigning statement which will really be mobilising for the Resist Racism demonstrations on the 18th of March, taking place in London, Glasgow and Cardiff. A big part of what the conference is doing today is looking to draw together all the unions, from the top right down to branches on the ground everywhere to get really behind those demonstrations, London, Glasgow and Cardiff. On the demos, we should say that not only do we want refugee welcome block, led by the people that are the organisations and so on that are involved today, Clare PCS and so on. But actually we want the front of those marches to be trade unions, people who have been on strike, marching arm in arm with refugees. And we want everybody to be involved in what that can look like and building that. This statement will also take up a demand for the justice for Windrush, which was brought up, and demand for inquiry, but actually a much more thorough resistance about the disgrace that the government is doing over that. On the 24th of February, get your diaries out, 24th of February and the 9th of March, these will be announced again in the next plenary. These are going to be big days of action. So if you've got your union branch, if you've got a local Stand Up to Racism group in your area, these are days that we want to see leafleting all over. All over the country. You're looking at me thinking, put the lid on of my water, which I never do. We're going to have days of action, which will be building for the demonstrations. We want unions to be a part of that. And on the 9th of March, just shortly before just 9 days before the demo, there's going to be a Twitter storm. We're going to be using the hashtag Unions for Unity and Resist Racism. And we want unions to start really thinking about that now. We've attended lots of times with an anti-racist message building demos. We will be supporting and promoting the Clare and PCS policy document demanding safe passage visas. This is going to be available. It's available on Clare website. It's available through Stand Up to Racism. We'll be sending that out. And we're going to be, I'll leave some of the other ones which aren't directly connected to this session for the next one because I don't want to hold people too long. And I know Clare's waiting very patiently. But do please stay for the announcements in the next session as well. So Clare, I'll hand it over to you to just sum things up.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for letting me be part of this session, which has been absolutely incredible. I would like to say that as well as fighting the government's policies, we want to fight for our idea, which is safe passage for refugees. So anyone who can sign up to that, who can support it, who can encourage their unions to support it, to share it on social media, please do. We have to say what we want as well as what we don't want. And there's just too much of what we don't want out there right now. I would also like to really briefly address the points that were raised by the gentleman. I'm so sorry I can't see him, but he asked why. I think what he was asking is why at this trade union conference has this discussion in this session been quite one-sided? And if you don't mind, I'd like to just give my perspective on that. I can't speak for trade unions, but from my point of view, what I see from the trade unions, that the essence of the trade union movement is about ordinary people banding together to stand up for the rights of those who are oppressed. And at the moment, one of the groups that is the most oppressed in this country is refugees and migrants. And the people that I see who are doing one of the best jobs of fighting that is the trade unions. And if we don't stand up for everybody who's oppressed, then who are we individually? And that's what I see the trade unions do so incredibly well. And that is why I am so incredibly proud to be working with them. He asked about us being a majority, and I think it's really important to remember when we saw the invasion of Afghanistan, when we saw the invasion of Ukraine, the British public responded fantastically. The response of the British public was amazing. We saw it in our charity. We saw it in the way people donated. We saw it in the response of the British public. The British public are not anti-refugee. The British public are amazingly supportive when, as the lady who spoke earlier, when they hear the stories, when they see the reality, the British public are compassionate, they respond, they want to help. The problem that we face is that the government is not telling them the truth. They are telling them that people in Calais are not genuine refugees, and they are. They are telling them that if they have crossed safe countries, they don't have a right to asylum when they do. The problem is that the government is muddying the waters by telling them mistruths. But I absolutely completely believe that the British public are supportive of refugees, and you only have to look at the response to Afghanistan or Ukraine to see the truth of that. It's not that the British public are anti-refugee, it simply isn't. The truth isn't out there. But thank you so much for letting me be part of this really incredible session. It has been amazing to be here with you all. Thank you so much.
Joining me. No, you're good. You're good. You're good. Thanks. That's great, Mark. Thanks. So just to say that's Mark Seawatch is waiting to join the next session. There's a brilliant lineup in the next session. So if everybody wants to get a quick 10-minute break and then back in the Brunei Gallery downstairs. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Claire.